Alright, cool.
Thank you. Is it ready?
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. It's Colin here, right again. I was on a video about, just 2 days ago, emphasising what money can do if it's been allowed to be formed. It's best to listen to my video 2 days ago, so I don't want to repeat it, but just very briefly I could say how we're be able to build water tanks for farms and corrugated iron on the top as the rain hits the corrugated iron, it goes into the reservoirs, and how it's going to have a churning motion to keep it keep it churning, keep it, the water moving, and so on, and shelters for sheep and that and such like. So refer to my last video, but I hadn't finished. There was one more in particular that I was looking at, was windmills on people's on people's houses, and because there was a guy in New Zealand here, he could generate his own electricity, and I'm not sure if he'd done it by windmills, but he did it somehow, so we could find out how he'd done it, and we could do it on each household. And then on businesses, if we could do it by windmills, then all businesses could be done, say, quite a few on top of the windmills, on top of the high-rise buildings, so we could have the whole of New Zealand being done by windmills, because we must be able to do it by windmills, because how do they do it by windmills? How do they create it by windmills on how they do it? So they must be able to have a small one do it the same way. And if you can't somehow, well then we'll find out how this guy did it. In New Zealand here, he made up his own electricity. And then, but supposing it was done with windmills, then you still need to be connected with the national grid, because something might happen to your windmill, or there may be no wind. And so that's another thing what we're looking at in my last video about supplying the money. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. In other words, I'm trying to tell you, in my last video I mentioned about that New Zealand should not be held to ransom over money. And so it always has been the way. It's always been held to ransom, because at the moment it's the same. In other words, there's money, there's work that needs to be done, there's more high-rise buildings need to be done and such like, and all these things, a lot of things need to be done, but that's lack of money. So I'm trying to get you to say on these videos to show you how that you can print money and get the job done, like what they're doing in Australia. They're printing money at the moment, or they were just recently, in relation to this COVID thing. And and so they're printing money to get the job done. Oh, I said, right, in New Zealand government, I think the Reserve Bank is printing money in New Zealand, I think, from what I can gather, but they're not printing enough money to get the job done. And so you've got this business about this budget every year. But just recently we've had another budget. That means what shall I say? That means conserving money, doesn't it? What does the word budget mean? It means budgeting. Your money means conserving it. You've only got a certain amount of money left, so you go into a supermarket and you've got to be careful what you buy. You've only got, say, 20 smackers to your name or something like this or whatever, and so on, and you got to conserve. So it shouldn't be like that. There's work to be done. Balance it out with money. And I'm proving it by my last video, and I put the same thing on. I put the same thing on a while back, I think. I'm not exactly sure whether I did put it on. I think I did, but it might have been the times when I was only getting about an average of about 10 or 11 viewers. But now I'm getting generally an average of about 250 viewers on the average. So things are moving along. Now, So we're looking then about, it's best to listen to my last video 2 days ago, you'll catch up better. I didn't finish, I didn't have time. So I could only about 35 minutes. So so therefore then, whatever the way the money comes from, it doesn't matter, but it is mattering to New Zealand because they don't print enough money. So therefore it was done. Oh yeah, that's right. And so we got all this done. We got shelters on our ships, shelters paid for. We got the water tanks done by catching the rain, huge water tanks, 600, 800 feet in the sky, and orchardists, as I say, with the Venetian blind system, and what else have we got? And the one I put on today about the windmills, and was there something else? So it can be done if a guy was able to do it, but if he was stopped, then he couldn't do it. Like for example, Murray Halberg, he won the gold medal for New Zealand in 1960 in the Olympic Games. Now, if you had have held back Murray Halberg physically, like just recently, I think I got the idea from just recently or so, there was an athlete, he was held back by a spectator, rushed out and grabbed him and stopped him from running, and so I believe that run should have been run again because of that. He grabbed this and he couldn't run, you see. So, so as I say, I think that personally that run should have been run again. It was somewhere just recently. It might not have been in the Olympic Games because I thought it happened just recently. It's maybe some kind of games or something, because they have all these things in between there in Olympic Games, don't they? They have races and that, and in between the Olympics and that. So anyway, so the same thing with him. If he stopped them, well, then he couldn't do it. But if you let him go, or if somehow or other he could print this money, then you get these things done. But it's best to refer to my previous video. So to catch up. So there we have it. We've got these things building. So now, if we can't resolve our problems in New Zealand with money, we'll have to try and solve it by running the country another way, not with money, but something else. Besides, money was not always been in the world. Have they? I mean, what, about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, money was invented by a smith. Probably he bashed some coins in, and what did he do with the coins? He put them in circulation. Where did all this money come from, all these billions of dollars that's in the world? They come by printing them off presses and putting them in circulation. The trouble is there's not enough money. People want work done. They've got asbestos or something in their houses. They've got, what is it, that other one, mould. Yeah, mould. And they've got leaks in their houses. And all needs to be done. But if you could just get a man around and print the money and get the job done, work balances out with money. But you see, they've got this problem of conserving money all the time. And it buggers, it fucks the country up, because there's just not enough money and there's people wanting to work and such like. And then temporarily you could give people, as I mentioned in my last video, $500 an hour. But normally you can't do that. Well, you can, but you have to, as I say, you have to address cigarettes, liquor, sweet things like chocolate bars and dope. But I haven't got time to go on to that in this video. I want to try to, so I only got times, and my time goes very quickly. So I thought, well, I'll finish off this video about the money system. So it just shows you, see, what you really need to. I needed more time on my last video, and kind of fucks it up somehow, because you could have. I didn't have time. I was going to put another video on at the time, but oh no, I don't think I could, because my friend that's helping me, he goes at 3:30, and I don't think I could put another video on. The time got away. So so therefore, refer to my video about 2 days ago. What are we now? The 2nd of July, 21. So so therefore, then you see, if we got enough money, do you know that in Australia, they they spend 10 billion smackers, not 10 million, but 10 billion smackers on goods that they use very little or don't use at all. So if they use it very little, well, it's pretty nigh a waste of time having it. If it's just very little, you may as well not bother. And yet, despite that $10 billion being virtually wasted on goods that they either don't use at all or use very little, it only constitutes about 2% of the prosperity of Australia in a year, no doubt. So therefore, it's 98% unaffected, and yet 10 billion smackers have been wasted. You see, you'll notice, despite everything what can be said and done, you'll notice that the countries that have got the high wages are always the countries that are richer. Despite that, people say, oh, you have high wages, then it's going to fuck things up with the paying too much salaries and so on. But as I mentioned to you once before, I think that if you put, you said, oh, well, too high the wages, let's put the wages down to 5 smackers an hour. Okay, so they thought, so the owners of businesses and that think, oh, bloody good, we got only pay our workers now 5 smackers an hour. So there they were, the workers, they're ready. But what happened? Nothing happened. Nobody came in to buy anything. Why? Because they got no money. That's why. Only $5 an hour. Got no money. But when you've got money, the more money you have, it seems to work better that way. And just like the prosperity of countries around the world, I get a book. Well, I don't get the book myself, but my friend has got a book called, what is it called? Oh, hang on. I'll see if I can grab it. It's called, oh, I've forgotten what it's called now. Yeah. But it mentions in this book, the prosperity to countries in relation to the United States. And a lot of these countries, a number of these countries, their prosperity is only 1% of the United States. And that's when you got your poor countries, your malnutrition countries, and no hospitals and sickness, and that has to be helped by the rich countries. And the rich countries are the ones with the higher wages, like Australia. Now, Australia presently, I think just recently, have been printing money as well. So more or less doing what I'm saying to do. But in New Zealand here, we've got Grant Robinson, the Right Honourable Grant Robinson, but apparently is a very conservative man. So you're not going to get much done with Grant Robinson, because he was the man behind the recent budget. There's still a lot more to do. Now, another thing, you see, a very important thing to consider is that if you haven't got enough money, if you don't let enough money out, you're going to get your strikes. Now, in Wellington here, we've got a bus strike at the moment. Well, no, they're on the buses at the moment. They're negotiating on wages. And the nurses are on strike again. They're in trouble. They want more money too. So if you had money, print money and giving it to them instead of trying to go on with the amount of money you've got. I mean, you're not keeping up with it. Or put it this way. Each 10 or 12 years, 1 billion people have been added to the world. There's a lot of people in just 10 or 12 years. So how can you operate on the same amount of money when you've got an extra 1 billion people coming to the world to work on? Now, even if you gave them one smacker a week extra, so that means you printed $1 billion extra a week. All the newcomers get is just one smacker a week. Where's that going to go? You need at least really 1,000 smackers a week to really have money to spend in that. But there's, as I say, though, with high wages well, you've got to address, or if you're going to have $500 an hour, as I say, you've got to address cigarettes, liquor, sweet things like chocolate bars, and dope has to be addressed. But they can be resolved. I don't want to spend any time on those at the moment. But it could be done just in a small basis, but involves a small amount of people, like building these water tanks. As I say, we give people $500 an hour because it doesn't matter on a small scale. But on a nationwide scale, you're going to have to address these things as mentioned. But you see, in other words, so the bus strikes, so just give them more money if you want to do it, and then you could run the country better. But they conserve, you see, they only allow a certain amount of money, and it fucks the country up because it's not enough. As I say, 1 billion people have been added to, so therefore, where are we now? 21, that means what, 2011, since 2011, wait a minute, was it 2010 or 12 years? If it's 10 years, if it's 12 years, that'd be 1 billion people have come into the world since what, about 2011? That's 10, 2008, 2009 to 2011. 1 billion people have been added since, roughly 2009, then say. So in this short time between 2009 2021, 1 billion people are going to be added to the population of the world. So as I say, if you just gave them one smacker, printed 1 billion smackers, that's only one smacker a week. So to put 1,000 smackers a week, you have to print $1,000 billion a week just to keep up with the population. It's rather like the problem with in New Zealand with the power supply. They kept on using the same amount of power stations each year without increasing it, hardly. And so they did have the coal-fired one in Huntley. It's still there, I think, operator's still there ready. But they didn't have enough electricity. So 1 year there, they had so little electricity that what they did was they allocated a certain amount of electricity for each area. And in Wairoa, my hometown, it's a small town about halfway between Napier and Gisborne by the sea called Wairoa, little town of about 3 or 4,000 or so, and that's my hometown. And there, I went into Osler's at the time, this was years ago, and they had 2 heaters on. It was a cold morning, but they had one heater facing one way and one heater the other. They probably could have tried and done with one heater in the centre, so they're trying to save power. Well, anyway, what happened with Wairoa is that they overused their the power what they were allotted, and about 10 o'clock at night, the whole power just went off for Wairoa, apart probably from the hospital. There's a hospital on the hill in Wairoa, so they probably had their own electricity even then, years ago. And so you see, there wasn't enough power stations, you see. But now, and recently, now they've got a lot more. And in fact, they weren't going to build any more because a year or two ago or so, they weren't going to build any more because they've got enough now at the moment. and but they're still probably relying on the lakes a lot. But they've got these windmills going now, and that's a big help for New Zealand. So there should never have been a lack of power. And then at one stage, the smelt, not what to say, down South Island, the aluminium smelters, they closed it down or something because they're using too much power. Well, that's no good. You should have more power generated. Print money, get the power stations done, and then you've got more electricity. Now I think what's happening, the aluminium smelters down the South Island, they're not going to close them down, but that the electricity bosses have decided to charge them less for electricity, and so that's a good move too, rather than closing them down, because that's you lose employment that way. It's stupid. You've got to keep employment going. New Zealand's got to get prosperous and help other countries out. If it's got a lot of money, we can help more other countries and so on, and help our country. We can't have a recession, bloody shit and that. You've got to keep things moving. Aluminium smelter is taking a lot of employment. Go and pull the whole bloody things down. It's stupid. So just pointing out here how that by money can what shall I say, it can keep the country going. Now there is another way how it can be done. If I've got time to briefly mention this, it's 27 minutes here. Just very briefly I could mention it. It was revealed unto me by the author of Royal Romance, the maker, the inventor of Royal Romance, is the Holy Spirit. He's the one that invented it all. So he spoke to me some years ago, and he told me that that we don't need money to run a country, and he gave me just a brief outline on it, and so it was enough to see how that we've all been had by this money system. And just briefly, I think it works that, if I've got time to mention it, just briefly it works that, supposing that you wanted to go on a holiday, so you got a cab to the airport, but there's no charge because the taxi driver's doing his 8 hours, and so you get to the airport, and the plane is free wherever you're going to go, to Auckland from Wellington or where you're going to go, because the airways people are doing their 8 hours. And then you get another cab, say to your motel, and then that cab driver, again, he's doing his 8 hours, and then the motel people are doing their 8 hours, and so everybody does their 8 hours on a job or jobs that's been allocated by the government, or confirmed, allowed by the government, say, and I just got that brief outline about it. It was enough anyway. I can't exactly remember it, but it was probably done that way before money came into existence. But you see, money's holding things up. You see, you haven't got enough money all the time. So nurses, you see, complaining, and it's fucking the country up with these strikes and things. We've got enough bloody problem with these bloody lockdowns and this bloody virus. See, I'm trying to get rid of that too from New Zealand and the world too. I'm not getting any help. So what I'm getting now is I'm going to go to the reps of radio stations and the reps to TV stations, tell them about orthomolecular medicine, from orthomolecular medicine physicians from the United States, and get interviews and knock out this virus. There's a lot of people listening to radio and TV, so get on there, get to Parliament, change the laws and different things. So we want to knock this virus out from New Zealand and the world, and other things too has got to be done too. But I mentioned that to show you that you don't have to have money to run a country, because it's not necessary really, because they didn't have money a few thousand years ago, did they? They were operating without money, and then one time they started to print money. Some or some woman got the bloody dear to have this money bloody dear. So then they began to print this thing and then put it into circulation, and then we're going to operate on money for a few thousand years now. And you see, you're held to ransom. You see, there's not enough money bloody around all the time. And so we need to, if we want to, it can be done if we put enough money, you see, that's the bloody deal, and get things moving. And as I told you before, that the countries in the world that are the poor countries, only some of them I nearly got the name of that book, and it nearly came to me. Operation New World, Operation World. Operation World was the book, yeah. And it normally comes out about every 10 years. And one thing it gives is the prosperity to countries in relation to the states. And as I say, a number of these countries are only 1% prosperity to the United States. No money. And it's so poor. And the poor countries, and they get diseases and they die and so on. It's only the help from the West that's helped them quite a bit. Otherwise, they had their famines and that, and they die. And they die of starvation and that. Even today, they're still dying of starvation in some countries and that. I was reading in a book, he said that starvation is still alive and well around the world. So anyway, my time's getting up here. So it's still on 27 minutes by the looks. 20, looks like 20. Got to keep an eye on this time here. 10, 20, looks to be 27 minutes. I think it's still in the 20s here. So anyway, I just got to keep an eye on this time. Otherwise, they won't accept it. If it gets over, excuse me, 20. I think it's 29 minutes. I think got a bit of time. I think here. It looks like a 2 there for a start. So just don't want to go over the time. Otherwise, this message won't be. They won't put it on because my friend can't find it. So anyway, we're looking then about New Zealand, yeah. So what we need to do then is print money, and it can be proved by the fact that all these things need to be done. Plenty of water, because the high-rise tanks built with equivalent to counterfeit money, so done by a guy, something, and he printed billions of dollars, because normally it'd be found out. But if there's some way how he wasn't found out, so the Holy Spirit stepped in and says, you do this, you print the billions, I'll see to it that everything flows. So if he's in control, well, that's it, he's in control. So whatever way it was done, you print money, nurses got plenty of money, they won't go on strike, bus drivers got plenty of money, and they're about to do much else. We're going to do a lot more for New Zealand if we had more money. So that's the message today. An overflow from the message. And just keep an eye on this time here. It still seems to be 20s, 29 minutes. I've been on it for about 10 or 20, I said about 30 minutes, right, 20 days. I think I've got a bit of time left here. So that's the idea is we need more money in society. We're just not getting enough money. In Australia, as I say, they print money. The Honourable Grant Robinson, the Minister of Finance, seems to be, as I say, too conservative. He's allowed in the budget a lot of money to go to beneficiaries. They'll get more money and they'll spend more, so create employment. That's maybe what they do to the beneficiaries over 65 or over. They give them superannuation, don't they? In New Zealand, I'm on super myself. So they probably just print money for the beneficiaries, and then they put it into circulation, and then they spend it and create employment. So that's probably, but they are doing that up to a point. And I believe that the Reserve Bank did print a lot of money, billions of dollars, I think, but there's just not enough money printed, you see. As I say, in just 10 or 12 years, you got 1 billion people been added to the population of the world. Of course, New Zealand's population would be very little, but in comparison, but still over the whole world, you'll have to print, if you just printed $1 billion extra over the whole world, you only got one smacker per person of the new people coming into the world in the last 10, 12 years. And if you printed 500 smackers each, well, that'll be 500 billion a week extra, but that's not enough money either. You really need to print 1,000 smackers an hour, but because you've got to watch, as I say, cigarettes, because people just smoke themselves to death. You've got plenty of money. Incidentally, about cigarettes, the easiest way to give up is by what the troops did in the Second World War, and one guy did in Tauranga, or woman, was put on Ewing's phone people. He used to be a speaker on Radio New Zealand, was it, or he used to be on Radio Pacific, I think he was, and he was on a health program, Mr. Ewing or something. So he wrote a few books or so, and one of them is a woman or a girl in Tauranga, a woman or a guy in Tauranga, got rid of cigarettes by putting Epsom salts into her mouth for 3 days, or his mouth for 3 days. So that's what the troops did in the Second World War, when, of course, you can't get smokes, you know, in wartime. So they used to put Epsom salts into their mouth, and takes away the desire to smoke. So 3 days, put Epsom salts into your mouth, hold it there as long as you can. Naturally, if you're going to eat, you need to take them out, or talking, but try and not talk too much, perhaps, if you can, and hold it as long as you can in your mouth for 3 days, and it should apparently take away the desire to smoke cigarettes. So that's interesting for you smokers. But the trouble is with New Zealand, New Zealanders are very slow to change, and so it's unlikely that hardly any New Zealanders will do it, because that person did it in Tauranga. But New Zealanders are very much of a dud race. My fellow New Zealander, they're okay in reasoning power. They're very good to reason. New Zealanders are very good to reason with, but they're duds really in certain areas. And one area they are very slow in is change. New Zealanders are very slow to change. So that's a problem with New Zealanders. So you tell them about this, about Epsom salts, but they just do nothing about it. They just carry on smoking themselves to death, and so on. But I want to go to the smoke place and tell them about it. There's quit line, there's quit line on your cigarette packets. There's quit line. So I want to phone that number and find out where they are in Wellington, and go and see them personally, and show them how that Epsom salts can take the number out. And if they could put that on the packets, Epsom salts, do it, or something like, put a bit on about it, we might hopefully get some people that will give up. But as I say, New Zealand, it's very difficult with New Zealanders. That is, my fellow New Zealander, he's very slow to change. It looks like my time's just about up here. It's like 33 minutes at the moment. So I better close this video then. And so don't forget to see my last video if you didn't 2 days ago. This is the part that combines with this one about the big water tanks and that, and how a guy can get away with it. Wherever the money come from, it could be done, unless he was held back, and he couldn't do it. But if he was allowed to move on, he could just put his own money and get the job done. And so we could have everybody employed, people getting lots of money. And once we overcome the cigarette problem and that, we could give people $500 an hour easy, more than that, and give people a lot of spending money and such like. Well, anyway, I haven't got any more time now. It's 34 minutes, 34 and a half minutes. So I'll have to close this video then, and I'll catch up with you and on another video probably next week. So I've got about 43 videos on YouTube. Of course, you can get me by putting Colin Wellington and that brings me up on YouTube. If you, of course, you'll be listening now on YouTube, but if they subscribe, so see if you can get your friends and that to watch this, to watch my videos, and we can get more views. And then I want to go, as I say, to the 35 minutes now, so I must close. So so I want to go to the TV stations at the moment, especially radio first, and see reps there. Make an appointment to see a rep. Tell them about orthomolecular medicine, from orthomolecular medicine, physicians from the United States, as on my videos, and to get this virus knocked out and so on, and then we could get things done. And then I could really make New Zealand the greatest nation this world has ever known, and then take it to the world. So I must close then, 35 minutes. So I will catch up with you on another video probably next week. And don't forget, if you can, get your friends involved, and anybody you can, put Colin Wellington, and that brings me up on YouTube. And if they subscribe, tell them, and so we can get this message to as many people as possible, and so we can sort New Zealand out. And so don't forget then to hear my other videos, as many as you can. As I say, I've got about 43 videos on, and it will get things sorted out for New Zealand and the world. But I must close now, so so I'll catch up with you. So in the meantime, it's Colin here signing off. Right, bye for now.